Hello, everyone. Welcome to Good Body, Good Brain podcast. I am your host today, Dr. Sally Good, and I have some of the most wonderful, creative, smart business people on, and today is no exception. We have with us John Golden, who is with Pipeliner CRM, and today we're going to talk about a subject that's dear to my heart as well. The power of simplicity and how to stay away from shiny objects. So here we go. Thanks for joining us today, John. You've got a perfect media name. I love the name John Golden. It's sort of like Sally Good.
I'll have to give credit to my dad for that one, and his dad before him, etc. But I mean, I am Irish, and it is a relatively unusual name for Ireland. There are Goldens, but it's not one of the more common names for sure.
And so you're actually broadcasting right now from San Diego.
From San
right?
Diego, indeed. Yeah. We've had our first major rains, which is great because we've been going through a dry period, and obviously we've had wildfires, obviously up in LA, much worse, but we've had some down here. So the rain has been some welcome respite.
Tell me a little bit about, for Pipeliner, who is your main target market? Who do you really actually have in your process?
Yeah, so we really cater to medium to large and to enterprise organizations. So we're not really a CRM for small business or for solopreneur, even for 2Z, 3Zs. We're for people who have a sales process, who have a sales team, at least 10, 20 people and up to thousands, and who believe in sales process. Because we're also a process engine, but we're a CRM exclusively for sales. We don't meander into other areas. We stay everything you need from sales, whether it's for generating new business or account management. We have everything you need within the system, and we really nowadays we compete with we would say probably the big five, and they are Salesforce and Microsoft Dynamics and Sugar and those folks. And we have customers in I think over 34 countries worldwide. We've grown year over year. We grew through the pandemic. We've been growing since. So people are getting to know us more. We've been a very product-driven company, so we haven't really done what a lot of our competitors have done and dumped millions into advertising and branding. And we prefer to build the best platform and sort of let that speak for itself.
That is a wonderful business concept. I'm right there with you. When you have something of quality, it's not selling. No. You're actually helping the person to get greater at whatever they've chosen in their own purpose. Yeah. And so service selling is really at the top of my list as well. And so as a service seller, and you guys started off very small, and then you grew, and you kept doing the same thing over and over and seeing what worked. I'm sure you probably did a lot of testing, A/B testing, that sort of thing. What works, what doesn't work. And what did you find was like the bottom line in terms of the clients that were the most successful?
Yeah, it all comes back to, I mean, this is our subject today, is the power of simplicity, Sally. It is really, at the end of the day, is people don't want complex systems, and they don't want like complex kind of concepts. They want to be able to quickly do things and understand how to do them and be able to execute them quickly. So we really adopted cybernetic principles, which is the science of simplicity. And as you know, creating something simple is probably the hardest thing you can do. It's very easy to create complex stuff because we're fantastic at that. We can have it go off here, then bring every exception, anything you can think of, and throw it all in and forget about the end user. So what we did differently is we focused 100% on the end user, the salesperson, right? Because all other CRMs, quite frankly, are really built from a command and control and a management perspective. We said, no, let's empower the salespeople. And if you empower the salespeople and if you give them something that actually helps them do their job, then management will get the data and the information they need, because they'll actually get adoption. Because at the end of the day, without adoption, you can have whatever, right. It doesn't matter what you have, it's going to be garbage because the data is not going to be in there. So that was focusing very, very, very absolutely laser focused on what does a salesperson need to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And salespeople are visual, so we made the system as visual as possible.
Mm-hmm.
They don't, they don't need to waste their time learning all these like clicks and
No,
this and that and the other.
you're
So we
action
made
oriented.
action
Let's get
oriented.
going. Let's
Yeah.
go.
So we made it really simple for them, and obviously we've been bringing AI into the system even well before this
Mm-hmm.
latest wave of AI, and now we brought more of it. And at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're trying to, and with our automation workflow engine and everything, is remove all the rote, routine, and repetitive tasks that salespeople have to do. So get rid of all of those, automate them. Let AI take care of them. Let AI also take all that customer information and prospect information, distill it, and make sure that what is, where they are, sentiment, everything, and the
Right. Pain
communication.
points.
Now,
Yeah, everything.
yeah, and now, guess what? You as a salesperson get to do what salespeople and what humans can do best, and that's build relationships with the prospect and customer, and do the things that AI can't do right now, and I don't think really will ever be able to do, is that human connection and build that relationship. And so, yeah, so our users, love it now because they are able to do what they consider and what we consider the high value activities, not the low value ones of data entry and all of that stuff. So that's
Yes.
our philosophy, is get to what, and at the end of the day, let people do what they're best at.
Yeah,
Isn't
and
that
they love
beautiful?
doing. They just love it.
Yeah. Yeah, because
That's why.
let's face it. I mean, and it's a funny concept that we have as humans, and this is something that has really bothered me for years, ever since I came into the corporate space, is this idea of, we love to focus on what people don't do well, right? We love that. We've all been through performance reviews, right? Because corporations love performance reviews. Once a year, and HR is all over this, and the performance review was always like, yeah, so Sally, you did you did this really well this year. You did that really well. Congratulations. Now here's 550,000 things that I want you to work on that you didn't do so well. And you're just going, why not focus on, if you do two things or three things really, really well, why don't I try and make that 100% of your job, instead
Yes.
of trying to get you to do things that, number one, you're never going to be able to any good at, you don't
And I
want
won't
to
care.
do, you don't care about. Yeah. So
Care.
I wish we would get away from that, and I wish we would focus on people's strengths. And when you focus on people's strengths, and you can
Yes, the strength. Yes.
and you can help them configure their job, that it and maybe it means you team with somebody who has other strengths that they don't have, and then life becomes beautiful.
Yes, because the things that they love are the things that not only make them happy, it also makes the company money.
Absolutely.
And there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
So what would you prefer?
Monetization.
What would you prefer? Would you prefer people to be doing the best that they can do, and optimizing the role, and really knocking it out of the park, or would you like them to be doing lots of things in a kind of mediocre to not very good fashion?
Right. If your value system is hinged on excellence, and everything you have is a value proposition, you know what the underlying value is of what you're doing. And what you're doing it's capitalism, but what does capitalism do? It empowers people to be the best they can be, and to also empower other people, team members, etc., because you're creating that culture of empowerment within their system.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other philosophy that underpins what we do as well is, we call it win-win. And we really believe like, fundamentally in this concept of win-win, because if both parties, if the salesperson and the customer, if you both feel at the end of the day that you've got a fair deal, maybe that means you give up something. Everybody, you give up something, I give up something. That's fine. We're good. But when you come away feeling like it was a fair deal, I'm getting fair value, I paid a fair price, I received a fair, price as a vendor, then you build trust, and people want to work with you, and they want to talk about you, and they'll become advocates. But it's such a simple concept
Yeah.
that unfortunately is not embraced by a lot of companies, and a lot of people still have that mindset. If I don't win, then I lose. And if I don't win and you lose, then somehow I'm not. I need to come out better somehow than you do, which is such an odd concept if you think about it. Why wouldn't it be better if we both came out feeling that we had a good deal? And here's the other thing. Why shouldn't that be an enjoyable experience? Like, why does it have to be kind of a tense and horrible experience to go through this, sale and, buying and selling stuff? Why does it have to be? If you come with an abundant mindset, it should be an enjoyable experience.
Yes. And there's a young man on YouTube. You may have heard of him. His name is Alex Harmosi. And, he was sitting down the other day talking about he's a deal maker. He's an acquisition kind of guy.
Right.
And he started out in the gym sort of place. And he was talking, he said, the deals we make, the ones we make with friends, people who know us and have seen us and trusted us for a period of time, those are the fun deals. The deals we make with people who are trying to screw us over, those aren't the fun deals, and they don't go so well.
No. And then if you think about it, like, why would you approach something from the point of view of, I'm going to screw you over, right? Or I'm going to get the best, and she didn't notice this, so I'm not going to say anything. Because at the end of the day, I mean, don't I want repeat business? Don't I want to build relationships? I don't know. Maybe suddenly 3 months later, you come back and you go, hey, I want to expand this relationship. Or guess what? We have a subsidiary out here and I want you to go into them. People take a very short-sighted view. And if you have that transactional mindset where it's just like, I'm going to squeeze you to get the best price and the best thing for me. And I don't really care about you. And I'm not even going to mention this other stuff here that maybe, normally it would be included or whatever. I'm going to, con you a little bit on that, but I'm going to, you may get like your 2 seconds of satisfaction, like, oh, I got that. But you're always going to be transactional. You are never going to build and quite frankly, you're never going to enjoy your job and you're never going to really be happy because deep down, inside, I always talk about this, your 4 a.m. moments, right? I believe, that most people, if you wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning and whatever you think about, you can't hide from. And I think that's, if you're 4 a.m. in the morning and you're saying, okay, I'm not that good a person, I'm really ripping people off. Like maybe you go back to sleep and you continue to do it. But I think that you're not acting in an honest, fair and equitable fashion. You know that. And to be honest, if you do that in business, you'll do that in life, and you won't have a happy life.
Personal life.
Yeah, you won't have a happy life.
Doing it with your kids.
Yeah.
I want somebody to say, hey, you've got to go talk to my friend Sally. Just like I'd say, hey, you got to go see my friend John. He does this thing. I'm not really sure what it is, but it might work for you. So here's his number. Go check it out.
Yeah. And be happy. And also be happy for be happy that the other person got a good deal. Be happy that the other person, and to be honest, if you couldn't do a deal with them and they went off and they got the product that worked for them better and they got a good deal over there, be happy that they got the right solution for them. But like I said, that takes a mindset of, as I said, abundance and also of humility and a little bit more empathy and realism and stuff, and not being, because unfortunately today, Dr. Sally, we live in this, what I call the comparison culture, right?
Yes.
Because of
social media.
Because of social media and so many people, and people construct these images of other people. They fill in the gaps. They see a photo and then they build this whole narrative around it in their head, drive themselves crazy, instead of just going, okay, that's nice picture, good for them, and then refocusing on yourself, your life, how you can do the best things and all of that, and stop this comparison, because it's a poison that will eat away at you, and you'll never be happy if you're always, because I do martial arts, right? And one of the things that we learn early in martial arts is there's always going to be someone faster, stronger, more flexible, fitter, younger, whatever it is. And if you go to classes and you spend your whole time looking at other people and going, oh, look at them, they can do this, I can't do that, you'll be miserable, right? And you will never
Yeah.
progress. You'll never.
Mhm.
Now, if you go and say, okay, did I, am I better than I was last month? Have I improved?
Mhm.
So you compare yourself with yourself. Am I improving? Am I moving forward? In the, in a way that makes sense for me with my capabilities or whatever, and then suddenly it becomes really enjoyable, because now you're not worrying about in fact you're clapping these other people who can do things you can't do, but you are happy because you're progressing yourself, because you're
Mhm.
measuring against yourself. And I wish,
Mhm.
instead of people comparing themselves all the time on, so is like, compare yourself with yourself. Are you in a better place than you were a week ago, a month ago? Are you developing and progressing as a person? Are you in your career? Are you
Mhm.
moving forward? Those things. Like, so compare yourself to yourself and forget the rest.
Well, we're missing out with a small gesture. It's a gesture of celebration. Our
Yeah.
brains love it. Whenever
Hmm.
we can do some of these things, our brain shoots out a little dopamine and says, "Oh, I like that. Let's see
Yeah.
if I can figure out a way for you to do more of that." And it
Yeah.
starts searching the neuroscience of making yourself better because you're telling your brain good stuff. When you're telling your brain, "Oh, I'm stupid, I can't possibly do that. Oh, look at that person. I'll never be able to do that." Then your brain says, "Oh, that's true. You never will."
Yeah, no, and that's such a profound point, Dr.
Mhm.
Sally, because I've been fortunate to have had a couple of people I've been able to mentor and help over the years, and one of the first things I realized, because I remember with one person, he wanted to, he said, like, I need to put together a resume and all of that, and he goes, but I really haven't done anything, and I've had, whatever, and I said, just hold that thought for a second. I said, let's just talk for a few minutes. And I said, let's
Mhm.
just go back and let's talk through your life, your progression of your
Mhm.
life. And then, we did it, and I was making notes. And then I said at the end, I said, wow, look at all the things you've achieved. He was like, what? And I said,
Mhm.
yeah. And I said, but look, at most important, look at the obstacles you've overcome, and you've survived. Not only have you survived them, but you've moved
Mhm.
on from them, and you've thrived and stuff. And I said, you got to pay attention. You don't dwell in the past, but you look back on the past to give yourself good comparison markers, to say, look, I did
Yeah,
this.
yes, it informs the future.
It does. And at the end of
Mhm.
the process, we did a resume, and he goes, oh, this is great. Like, I sound great. I said, no, you don't sound great. You are great. This is what you
Mm.
have done. This
Mhm.
is just a snapshot of your life. I said, so in future, I agree 100% with you. So acknowledge when good things happen, or when you do something. Give yourself a pat on the back, and
Mhm.
and you're right. Like, don't always don't wait for external validation, right?
Mhm.
Be if you are self-aware enough, and you're mature enough and humble enough, you will know the moments when you have done something, and you can give yourself the pat on the back. And as you said, that's the fuel to drive you forward.
Yes, the other day I managed to make a sales page and make it work and
There
connect
you
it up.
go.
I
There you
went,
go.
"Oh, people always give me this, like, when are you going to retire?" I said, "Retire? Are you kidding? I'm just learning all this new stuff."
Yeah.
I'm on an AI track as well.
Yeah.
I help people become early adopters because they're scared to death of it,
Hmm.
particularly women entrepreneurs.
Right.
And it's a bunch of fun. We
Yeah.
can do so much fun with this stuff, and we can create so much in our lives that we can
Yeah.
do our zone of genius.
Yeah, yeah, no, I absolutely, and I think that's the fun part. Is, I mean, to be the continuous learning. Again, if we come back
Mhm.
to the concept of simplicity, that's a very simple concept. Is
Mhm.
continuous learning, and if you have,
Mhm.
and on top of that, I think, or underpinning that, is curiosity. Just be, instead of like, oh, AI, oh, this is, just go, wow, that's fascinating. Well, what can I learn about this? How can I adopt this? And whether you're just replacing your search engine with an
Mhm.
AI tool that you use for
Mhm.
that, whether you start really small, where it doesn't matter. But that curiosity, and the embracing and the wanting to learn, it's like, that is the essence, because that's the essence of who we are. That's what we were when we first came into this world. We're just these, like, wide-eyed, curious baby. Like,
Mhm.
what's going on here? And
We're
as we progress,
sponges. We're just
yeah, yeah, and then somewhere along the line we lose that kind of that glorious curiosity, right?
Mhm.
Just the pure curiosity about things. And if you can recapture that, and just and your first reaction to something is not one of like, oh, hang on a
Mhm.
second, this looks, is to just go, wow, this is interesting. I don't really understand it right now, but I'm going to learn a little bit about this. So I think that's so fundamental, and I think that is such a simple concept. It's just that continuous learning and the curiosity, and it makes your life so much more interesting, and you feel excitement as opposed to reticence or fear when you just and hey, listen, I'm never going to be an AI, whatever, data engineer. I'm not going to be an AI scientist, but I'm
Mhm.
excited to learn the things that I can learn and use it the way I can use it.
Yes, and the other thing about that curiosity quotient, I'll call it, is that it makes us not only curious about learning stuff, like stuff, it makes us curious about learning about other people.
Yeah.
And I just had a wonderful podcast a couple of days ago with a woman who specialized in grief,
Oh.
and that's the ultimate service when you can
Mm.
bring a little tiny bit of respite, just the tiniest bit, to somebody who's gone through a major loss. And
Mm.
it could be losing house to
Yeah,
fire. It's
absolutely.
all these things. It's not just losing a person, it's losing a pet that you were so attached to. And it's the simplicity of small actions. And I think when we know our person and we ask permission and say, can I do this or that for you? It really, really embodies that whole thing of trust and communication and knowing that somebody really cares about you. That's the ultimate sales tool there is.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think the humility and the empathy are so key. And I do think a lot of people have lost that sense of empathy. I know people like talk about it a lot, but they don't really
Mhm.
practice it. Same with humility as well, is because again, I think everybody's so wound up about what other people are doing, what other people have,
Mhm.
what, feeling a sense of inadequacy and all of that, and then
Mhm.
compensating with, being even more aggressive or whatever in your approach, rather than. And I think part of it is because people have lost the ability to spend time with themselves, right? Because
Oh,
we have
deep
these
work.
yeah, we
Yes.
have these narcissistic devices in our hands that keep going, look at me, look at me, look at me. And we go, oh, okay.
Mhm.
And I found this, and I've talked to people, and when I say to people, the best thing you can do is like take a half hour out of your day. You don't even have to be every day, but take a half hour out of your day, right? And just sit in silence, go for a walk, leave your phone at home or whatever. Or if you're
Mhm.
worried that there's going to be an emergency, personally, I think if half an hour, you're not going to, you can spare that for without your phone. But
Right.
if you can't,
Get out in nature.
but nature, and then focus on just being, and focus on listening to your own thoughts, and maybe having an internal
Mhm.
dialogue, and then looking at nature and all of that, and just separating yourself from the digital noise around you, from everything. And I think if you
Mhm.
do that, then you can start to develop a much greater sense of calm and self-awareness and all of that, if you just allow yourself to be constantly consuming this digital noise all the time, and your head is
Mhm.
full of all this stuff. I mean, it's impossible. You can't be the best version of yourself if your head is all fuzzied with all this nonsense that's going on in it. You have to take time out. And again, we come back to simplicity. It's a really simple concept. Like,
Mhm.
go spend some time in silence on your own, right? And just think and think about, and just contemplate your life and who you are and where you're going
Mhm.
and all of this kind of stuff, but in a very kind way, right? Not in a like,
Yes.
oh, I need to do
Yeah.
this, but in a kind way. And as you said earlier, oh, maybe take that half an hour to acknowledge what you've achieved in your life, or
Mhm.
whatever it is. But
Mhm.
focus on yourself, because I mean, you only get one shot at this, right? And I always like, the quote from my compatriot Oscar Wilde is like, be yourself because everyone else is taken.
Totally. And I call that time, that 30 minutes or however much time you can take, sort of conscious dreaming. You're
Yeah.
intentionally letting your imagination just fly.
Hmm.
And part of the work that I do with other humans is that kind of encouragement, but also I give them specific tasks to achieve. And one is to go outside and find a tree.
Hmm.
I don't care what kind of tree it is, no leaves, leaves blooming or not, but every day you go look at it
Yeah.
and you notice, does it look different? Is this
Hmm.
part of the bark peeling? Is it different? And one of my podcast guests said, did you work with that famous tennis player who lives in Australia now, like Novak? I said, no, but why you're asking? She says, because he goes to the place where they have really big trees, like Arboretum in Sydney, and he
Mm.
has his own tree. And he sits with the tree maybe sometimes an afternoon. And all his mates, of course, are laughing. They're
Sure.
crazy, like crazy. And they're saying, "Oh, this is so dumb, so woo woo. What are you doing this for? You're a bloke. Come on, come on." And then he started winning really
Mm.
big, and so he won all the majors. And guess who were the people who went and found their own trees?
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. They're probably full. Probably some people are like, "What? Why is this forest full of these tennis players now, hugging a tree?" We're overrun with tennis players finding a tree. But there you go. I mean, that's such a, again, it's such a simple thing, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what anybody else says because they're not you. And like you said, I mean, when these things start to actually show an impact, and that's the other thing too, Dr. Sally. I think the other simple thing is, there's a lot of because of politics and all of this, like there's a lot of people kind of lose their minds and people have gotten so
Mhm.
used to like shouting at people and saying you're stupid, you need to do this and you need to believe. and and I have never met anybody, and I certainly myself, I've never changed my behavior or changed anything because somebody shouted at me and called me stupid, right? It doesn't
Right, or
work that
criticize
way.
you.
Criticize
No.
you and call you stupid, that doesn't encourage you to do anything. However, when you see role models, when you see people modeling behavior, and you look at somebody and you go, they seem very happy and contented, and they seem to do this and do that. Maybe that's something I should do. So, at the same thing, when you talk about your tennis player, go sit in your tree. Don't care what anybody else says, but eventually, other people are going, that seems to be working. That seems to be so you can influence the world so positively by modeling behavior. Forget about, don't tell people what to do, just do the right things and people will notice.
Another form of simplicity,
Absolutely,
because
just do the right thing and people will
it is,
notice.
yes, and simplicity, and that, just that one sort of vision that you have, is the highest form of sophistication. Just being able to stick with it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think today the highest form of sophistication is to be somewhat self-contained, whether it's, completely
Mm,
self-contained or within your relationship or whatever, but
mm,
don't feel the need to overload your life with stuff and too
yes.
many people and all of this. And
Mhm,
don't fall into the trap, because that's like another trap people have fallen into. And because of social media, they've gotten this thing into their head about, it's all about quantity, right? Volume and quantity. The amount of likes I got, the amount of views I got. So then is it
mhm,
the amount of friends I have?
mhm,
So do I have this massive? Do I try to create these big circles of friends instead of like focusing on quality? On
mhm,
people who bring something, who I bring something to their lives, they bring something to my lives and all my life and all of this. And so I think, and it's a lesson we learn as we get older, right? Is that downsizing your life in
mhm,
and your mentally and all of that
mhm,
is a really good thing to do. Decluttering is a really good thing. Declutter your mind, declutter
mhm,
where you live, and to be
mhm,
honest, and if necessary, remove from your life anything that's not a positive influence. So,
mhm,
perhaps you have that friend who's always, you know, knocking you down and putting you down. And you have to then acknowledge to yourself first that
mhm,
it's not their fault, it's your fault, because you are holding on to that person for a reason. They're serving a purpose for you. And maybe that
mhm.
purpose for
Yes.
you is that you are not as confident as you about doing things, and when you see something that you really want to do, you then talk to that person because you know that person will knock you down, and then that'll give you an excuse not to do it. So it's not that person's fault, it's your fault. They're serving a purpose in your life. So sometimes you just got to bless them and send them on their way and stand on your own 2 feet.
I have a saying, this is an original quote, so anybody out there listening, your partner mirrors your pathology. We tune into channels of people who unconsciously we choose them because there's a healing that needs to be done from the past. It's like the young girl, 20-ish so, who marries a guy like her father because her father was either really an awesome human being or he was something other than that.
Yeah.
And she wants to heal it with this new person. The new person might be like, he's gone up the value ladder maybe 2 rungs. He's not as bad as the father, but he's not as good as she possibly could choose. And she's choosing that person because she thinks that's who she deserves. Because she's unique and one of a kind, I tell her, look, choose the person that's going to help you grow into the person that's going to be your best self.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, and it's interesting because you do see so many people end up in very dysfunctional, relationships and yes, you could, and I guess if I was a psychologist, I could probably trace it down to, a lot of those factors. But it's such a shame because you should be looking for somebody who you admire, somebody who maybe has, things that, traits that you don't have that you want that, like, I mean, I'm fortunate. My wife is like she's got this huge heart. She's such a kind and she's, I mean, I admire her, and she's like, I often, not in a bad way, but I always think, I always say like she's my better half because I sometimes say she's a way better person than I am. I'm telling you, you want to see how she handles situations sometimes compared to how I do, and I'm learning. I'm learning from her.
And you always want somebody who's got your back, that you can completely trust. If there's just one person in the world
that's what I say to people. I mean, I don't give marriage advice or relationship advice, but the only thing when anybody ever asks me, we were coming up on our 25th anniversary this year, when people say, what do you think is the secret to a good marriage or relationship? And I said, marry your best friend. And if they're not your best friend, then you're not going to have your marriage ain't going to work in the long run. If they are somebody, I love them and I want to marry them, but my best friend are these 2 people over here. No, that's not going to work. If they're your best friend, they have to be your best friend, and then it'll work.
Absolutely. And again, we're back to simplicity.
Yeah, it's not that's the only advice I give to people. I say, marry your best friend. And if they're not your best friend, don't marry them.
Wonderful. John, it's been so delightful having you on here. When we had our little prelim, like what we're going to talk about, I just like to go and riff and see what comes up. And anybody who's listened to this today, if you've got some value from it, hit the follow button, hit the subscribe button, because that helps me reach more people in the long run. And that you have given us some real golden jewels, as we call that, some jewels today about business, interpersonal relationships, the way to be good at what you're doing and still be highly ethical and principled. Those are concepts that the world needs to hear more of. And I certainly appreciate you talking about them today. If there's one last tip you'd like to give our listeners right now, what would it be?
Yeah, and it would be, just going back to what I mentioned earlier from Oscar Wilde, I would say, be your real and authentic self. Everybody else is taken, and you will never succeed to your maximum potential if you are inauthentic, if you try to take on a persona, if you try to adopt, the ways other people operate or whatever. Be true to yourself and go spend that half hour and find out who you really are, develop some self-awareness, and then just be the most authentic version of yourself. That's it.
Thank you so much. This is Mel Robbins. High five.
There you go.
And be glad that we're able to do this together.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Thank you so much, John.
It's
I
been
can't
so much
wait to
fun.
hear the comments from people listening to this recording. And don't forget, follow and subscribe. Push those buttons down below.